Happy New Year, everyone. This is episode 64, first episode of 2021. I'm joined by the usual suspects. We got Michael Gomes out in New Jersey. What's up, Michael? We got Tommy Rose Jr. out in Texas. And Gary Kitterson from 3D Boxing Blog. Always a pleasure to have him on as a guest panelist. Cortney will be in very shortly. He was with us momentarily. Moving forward, 2020 has been very difficult, troublesome year for everyone as we've battled this COVID-19 pandemic. Some of us have lost loved ones and close friends to this relentless disease. The boxing community was certainly no exception when dealing with loss in general. As we all know, Cynthia Saldana recently passed away to COVID-19 this past December. She was the lead photographer for Supreme Boxing, and most importantly, the life partner of our dear friend and colleague Anthony Saldana, lead writer for Supreme Boxing. To celebrate her life, this episode 64 is dedicated to her memory. Our thoughts go out to Anthony Saldana, Nancy Alvarez Rodriguez, the whole Saldana family, and Supreme Boxing family. I had the honor of hanging out with Cynthia on 3 occasions. First at a Thompson Boxing card in Corona, California, the Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman fight weekend in Las Vegas, and lastly, as a guest on Just Boxing Live with Sean Fitzgerald and Anthony. She always carried herself with class, super humble and nice. Again, our thoughts go out to her family, her close ones, her professional colleagues, as I mentioned. Anyone else want to share some thoughts and words before we talk some boxing? Anyone can jump in first who has some initial thoughts.
Yeah, just my thoughts go out to Anthony Saldana, his family, his grandkids, his kids. Definitely tough times, and just want to say that obviously the entire Standing 8 family is with him. Keep your head up. You will persevere. Obviously Cynthia is going to be very, very much missed by not just her family, but the entire boxing community.
Tommy or Gary?
Yeah, man. Likewise, man. Just absolute thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the Saldana family. Cynthia was a beautiful soul, and she'll deeply be missed, man. And we're everybody here, Gary, all of us at the Standing 8 podcast team. We're absolutely here with you, Anthony, and just hope that you'll stay strong, man, and just know you got a lot of people on your back and supporting you.
Yeah, the boxing family is tight knit, so everyone is here for Anthony and the Saldana family. Like I said, just a beautiful, wonderful person. Thoughts and prayers to the family and everyone who survived her.
Great words from everyone. We'll get Cortney's word in here as soon as he joins us. But let's get into some boxing talk. Got a big show, a lot to talk about. First will be, wait a minute. I think we have Cortney on. Cortney, what's up?
Gentlemen,
we were just talking about Saldana dedicating this podcast to her memory. I know you have a word to dedicate to her name, so go ahead, Cortney.
Unfortunately, for you all out there watching the show tonight, we have to begin on a very heavy note. One of our dear friends to the program and a very prominent member of the boxing community in Southern California, guest contributor Anthony Saldana. His wife, another dear friend of ours in the program, Cynthia, fought a very gallant battle with the COVID-19 virus, and unfortunately, we lost her on the 22nd of December. So first up, we have to begin by giving our deepest and most sincerest and heartfelt condolences and sympathies to Anthony Saldana and his family, and more particularly also his grandson Natty and his son Chris also. Cynthia, may you rest in peace, and we miss you, and we will always love you.
Thank you, Cortney, for that word. Cynthia Saldana, our thoughts and prayers go out to Anthony Saldana, who's still mourning and still dealing with this, and also to the Saldana family and the Supreme Boxing family, the Stanley 8 boxing team, the whole boxing community. We're with you. So our thoughts go out to you guys. So moving forward, we got a big show tonight. A lot of boxing. We'll be talking about Ryan Garcia's victory over Luke Campbell. Also, the Canelo Alvarez win over Callum Smith. And we'll be discussing our own individual pound for pound rankings for January 2021. So a lot of exciting stuff. So let's get right to it. First segment, Ryan Garcia, January 2nd on the Zone, 7th round TKO victory over Luke Campbell. Second round, Garcia got caught with a clean left, resulting in a knockdown for Campbell. But as we all saw, 7th round, Campbell couldn't recover from a hard body shot from Garcia. A very impressive win for Ryan Garcia in terms of being tested, being able to recover from a hard knockdown by the battle-tested Luke Campbell to eventually return the favor in the 7th with the hard shot to Campbell's midsection. It's hard to take away anything away from Garcia's win, especially for the fact that Campbell has never been stopped before. So Garcia had first dibs on that. So let's get your initial thoughts, Mike, on that fight.
I knew from the start that was not going to be an easy fight for Ryan. But I will say he did end up making it easy afterwards. There's a lot of people criticizing Ryan Garcia for his boxing acumen, his boxing or lack of boxing technical skills in the ring. He seems a little flat-footed. He throws a couple of wild punches. Here's what I will say that impressed me about Ryan. First and foremost, he's still young. He's a smart kid. He's going to get better. The fact that he got knocked down from a pretty hard punch that got him right in the button and was able to get up, although his legs were still under him the first 10 seconds, he was still putting pressure on Luke that entire round. His perseverance, his fortitude, his strength, his mental strength really impressed me tremendously. And he also showed the boxing world that he has knockout power, tremendous knockout power. I mean, he knocked a guy down that's never lost a fight being knocked down, And Luke Campbell, like I've said it before when I watched him against Linares, this is a very well-decorated fighter. This is a very, very good boxer who would give many boxers in that division trouble. And in fact, probably could beat some of the top 3, top 4 guys there right now as we speak. For people who, when I say people, the Facebook fans or the critics out there to poke fun of Ryan and say he's not ready or that he's going to get knocked out by Tank and he'll get embarrassed by Devin Haney. This kid still has a lot of room for improvement, but let's not act like guys like Tank, let's not act as if they don't have defensive liabilities as well. Yes, Ryan has some issues there, which he could correct. He could fix those. But again, what if Ryan catches one of them right in the button or catches them with a body shot the same way he caught Luke Campbell? That's the problem for them. Like, they're going to have to respect his power too, right? And the small things that Ryan doesn't do well, those are easy fixes. he will fix those issues. Like him being flat-footed, he will fix that, right? His defensive his defensive holes that he has, he can fix that. What you can't fix as a boxer is power. He's got it, right? And he's got the desire to win. Those two things combined, along with his popularity, it's going to make him very much one of the most fun and popular boxers in the next 5 to 7 years. And I'm looking forward to watching him fight somebody of Tank Caliber's, Tank Davis's caliber. Because, even though I give Tank the edge, I still think Ryan has a possibility of winning, right? So it's going to be fun. I mean, and again, I want to see those guys fight caliber fighters such like Luke Campbell to make a decision based on the eye test. None of those guys really fought anybody of Luke Campbell's other than Tank, right, with Santa Cruz. But Devin Haney hasn't fought somebody that I believe that I hold in regard to, let's say, a Luke Campbell. So it's tough to gauge who would win in a fight. And again, styles make fights anyway. Ryan's going to be a top fighter. I don't think he's there yet, but he's got the goods, and he's got, like I said, he's got the fortitude and he's got the desire to win. He's got that hunger.
A quick follow-up question for you, Mike, before I transition to someone else. You said Garcia could shore up those defensive liabilities really quick. Do you think Tank Davis has that same luxury? What are your thoughts on that?
So repeat that question. You broke up just a slight bit here.
You said Garcia could shore up those defensive liabilities really quick. Do you think Tank Davis has that same luxury? Can he do the same as well?
He can, but Tank's been fighting. Tank's been fighting for quite a while. He's got, I feel as if Tank has had the better preparation. He's had a better camp, better trainers. Obviously under the guidance of Floyd Mayweather, and that still exists. I don't know if he's going to. I don't know if that problem's going to get any better moving forward. I just don't think it is. I think that Tank relies a lot on his power, and I think he lets his guard down. And we saw in the fight against Gamboa where, a lot of that defensive liability was exposed, and other fights as well. Or maybe Tank just feels like, what, if this guy can't fight me, I don't care. It doesn't matter if he tags me. He can't hurt me. So what's the point? Who knows? I don't know. But he also hasn't fought anybody, with the knockout power of somebody like Ryan Garcia. Ryan's got, look, guys, you saw what he did to Luke, and we've seen what he's done to a lot of other guys. This kid's got brute power. And it's crazy to watch him with that type of power, because you look at this scrawny little white kid and you think like, oh, okay, whatever. And then, 1 round, 2 rounds, and he's knocking guys out the way he's knocking guys out. It's quite impressive. Again, if I had to choose which one of the two would win in a fight right now, if it was possible, I would say Tank, because he's a complete fighter in comparison to Ryan Garcia, right? Tank's better at certain things than Ryan is, right? Tank is not flat-footed like Ryan is. I think Tank actually has just as much speed, if not even more speed, than Ryan Garcia. I mean, we can debate that because they're both very fast. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But he's had enough fights by now to show the world that those defensive liabilities should have been fixed, and it hasn't. So I'm going to probably say no.
Cool. Thank you, Michael. Going you to Gary, what are your thoughts about that fight? And also, how do you size up both Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia?
I'm going to sound like a hater now. Look, I was one of the people who thought Ryan was more hype than substance. He's good. He's good. Like, I thought I picked Luke Campbell to win. I said, Ryan's going to come at him 100 miles an hour. He'll have some success early. Once we get to the middle rounds, Luke Campbell will just outbox him, and he'll win enough rounds where he'll win the fight in a close decision. That didn't happen, and Luke Campbell was never outboxing him. I thought once we got past the 5th round, I thought Luke Campbell was going to be like, okay, Luke Campbell's going to take over the fight now. Ryan just doesn't have the skills. He's too wild and he's too flat-footed. Luke, I mean, he didn't beat Loma, and he lost most of the rounds, but he boxed well with Loma. So I just thought Luke Campbell was going to be too skilled for him. Ryan Garcia showed me there's substance there. He used his jab better than he usually did. I still think he's too wild. He's obviously got power, he's got really quick reflexes and good speed. So he's good. Unfortunately, at this time, he's in the wrong weight class. Whereas I thought Devin Haney would have embarrassed him. I don't think Devin Haney embarrasses him, although I still think Devin Haney outboxes him, right? I would have said that Tank Davis destroys him, and I still think Tank Davis stops him, but it's probably more competitive than I would have thought. I'm not trying to sound like a hater. Ryan Garcia is good. I don't think he's as good as the other top names at 135.
Good stuff, Gary. Just to add to both your comments, Mike and Gary. I think at this point, I think from what I've seen, I think Tank Davis overall, I think he takes better shots, obviously, and then Ryan Garcia. But the thing is, Tank Davis, he gets hit a lot, but fortunately, he's never been put away yet. But we'll just have to see. Cortney, let's get your thoughts on the fight, and also how, as of now, how do you see so far a possible matchup between Garcia versus Tank Davis?
Well, man, between Mike and Gary, you guys stole most of my talking points. But just how I saw the fight, nothing surprised me. I think the only thing I really didn't anticipate about how that went down is how late it ended. I really thought Garcia was going to go in there and he was going to jump on Luke Campbell early, and he was doing that for the most part. But Luke Campbell just he caught him with a very he caught him with a shot he didn't see, and up to that point too, I was saying it in the comments on the fight thread too, is that Luke Campbell has a very sneaky and very credible Euro stick, as I like to call it. But he can do he has that very sneaky jab that's very well timed and well placed, and it's usually followed by a very crispy straight left. So so I think that was giving Ryan Garcia a lot of trouble in the first part or the beginning of the fight, and to me, I was looking at that, and I was just as the rounds went on, I was looking at how Ryan was dealing with that, and I said, he's gonna, once he figures that out, it's over. And sure enough, it was a very well placed shot to the body, which goes to serve my theory that I've held for many years now, is that British boxers are notoriously soft and susceptible to big body shots. It's just how they make them over there. You got these very lanky, tall, lean guys with very long torsos, as we saw in the Canelo fight versus Caleb Smith. And those shots, unfortunately, and especially when you're good on the jab like that, if you can navigate past the jab or get in under it, that shot's there all day, all night. And that's how Ryan Garcia got him out of there. As far as the reaction from the boxing community of Ryan Garcia's win, I think it's very unfair. I think it pissed me off and it annoyed me just to see people clamor immediately after saying he showed resilience, he showed poise, he showed a complete side of himself that we didn't think he was gonna have to display, and he displayed it. Ryan Garcia showed mad character to get off the canvas and in that fight the way he did. And then the reaction, instead of celebrating and accomplish, listen, this guy did with two of the best 135 pounders doing it right now couldn't do, as far as Lomachenko and as far as Linares. And that's sending Luke Campbell home early. And that fact that he couldn't even get credit for that, that's just that as far as boxing fans and as far as the people who out there who call themselves boxing pundits, it's a lot of haterism, and it's just a lot of petty shit that's hinged on that. If we can't celebrate the accomplishment, celebrate the performance that this guy put in without saying, well, Tank's, if he gets in with Tank, Tank's going to light his ass up, even though he did call Tank out immediately after that fight. So, but I mean, it just seemed like people, instead of recognizing the accomplishment, were immediately looking to minimize the accomplishment and marginalize him and his skills. Does he need work? Yeah. So the kid's in his early 20s. He needs polish more than I would say he needs work. As far as correcting the footwork and the placement, but if you look at how Ryan Garcia is getting guys out of there, it's a little different than what we're seeing from Tank. Tank has Deontay Wilder type power, where if he hits you anywhere on your body, you're going. With Ryan Garcia, and I think what he's worked and he's working on with Chepo Reynoso and being in Canelo's camp is he's that placement and that speed. They're teaching him to use that speed he's got to put that right amount of torque on his shots, and I think that's what he's got going for him. And that's in a lot of ways that's more dangerous than brute power, because you can hit guys with shots from unconventional angles, from where they went and with shots they don't see coming, because Luke Campbell had no idea that was coming to his rib cage. That was like a baseball bat being put there. So I think with more time under Eddie and Chepo Reynoso and being in the camp with Canelo, as we all know, Canelo is one of the best boxer punchers out there. He's really blossomed. I think Ryan Garcia can blossom in the same way. As far as how I see a matchup direct head-to-head between Ryan Garcia and Tank, I'd have to give the advantage to Tank. I'd have to put it about 55-45 right now. But that's not. I mean, but there's no way in hell you can convince me that Tank is going to win that fight going away against Ryan Garcia. Because we already know, and you've already seen, and we've already demonstrated that he can get up. He can get up off the canvas. Now, can Tank hit him with something where he doesn't get up? Yeah, that's certainly possible. But the caveat to that is we are yet to really see what Tank can do against a legitimate 135-pound fighter. And, if you ask me, what we've seen throughout Tank's rise is him being able to be a weight bully. Along the same lines that I hate that so many people make the comparison because of the association with Floyd. But when I look at Tank at this stage now, it automatically makes me think of the Adrian Broner we used to see on HBO After Dark, when he was fighting guys at 130 and 135 as well. So and what we know is when he got up a little bit of weight, those advantages that he had, he was not able to hold on to those. Now, Tank, who has been at 130 for most of his career, going to 135, can he carry that? It looks like he's going to. With 5, we didn't see the change with Broner until he got up to welterweight on 140. So, but the thing is, I think there's a lot that's unproven with Tank. We haven't seen the perseverance level that we've seen with Ryan Garcia, what he just demonstrated, and like I said, we haven't seen him against a legitimate 135-pounder. So with those intangibles, I think a matchup between Tank and Ryan Garcia is very intriguing, and I think it's very far from the foregone conclusion that people are painting this picture as in that matchup.
Great thoughts, Cortney, and I agree with a lot of what you said. As far as the perseverance factor with Tank Davis, and just to add to that, going back to that Luke Campbell knockout by Ryan Garcia, as we all know, Ryan Garcia, he kind of masked that shot. Well, he kind of masked it, making it seem like he was going to aim for the head, but he feinted it towards the body, which made it that unconventional and awkward to land. So great knockout victory. Tommy, let's get your thoughts on let's get your reaction on the actual fight and your thoughts on the very possible matchup between Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, man, just one of those things you just got done saying is how he set that shot up, and just like Cortney said, he put some serious torque on that shot. Like when you look at that shot land, how he twisted his glove right into his rib cage, like that shot was perfectly timed. It was perfectly placed, and as we're talking about, Ryan Garcia, he's got some real true power, but he's got that accuracy power. There's a difference between that brute strength where you can just dominate somebody with the force, but kind of like how Floyd, would knock people out. When you can make crisp, accurate shots in the right spots, and they're well timed as well. Those things are, I mean, they could be just as brutal. And so, that shot, it was wonderful. I did enjoy the fight. We do see the defensive liabilities that Ryan Garcia has, but I mean, he's a young kid, man, and for what he's doing right now, I agree with Cortney. I think that it is a bit unfair to place so much on him, the criticism, and especially right after he just got done doing what he did. He put that guy out of there. He got him out. He got off the canvas from a shot that would have put almost anybody down. Like that shot was super clean that he got caught with. He wasn't expecting it. And he got right back up and went right back to his game. He got right back in there. He wasn't running. He wasn't on the retreat. He fought his fight still. He was still very confident. And he did what he needed to do. So, when we get to talking about versus Tank Davis, I would have to agree. I think right now Tank would be able to win that fight. But I do see, depending on what Tank looks like in there against somebody like Ryan Garcia, that speed, that skill, that boxing skill that Ryan Garcia possesses, that could be something that could put Tank at bay if he's not able to get in there and just bully around and just do like what we saw him do against Santa Cruz, where he was just throwing that uppercut, win, lose, or draw. If he missed that uppercut so many times just because he knew that he was going to land it. And he knew that he was eventually going to get him out of there. But if he's got somebody like Ryan Garcia that's being skillful in there, being very quick, being and landing those shots to win those rounds as well, and be able to sustain him and keep him at distance, that could be a whole different game. On top of the fact that Ryan's got that power, so it's a possibility. I think so. A small possibility right now. But I do think that we're going to see a lot more improvements, from Ryan Garcia as we move along in the next 2 years or so. There's going to be some vast improvements, and we could be talking a whole different conversation at that point.
Hey, I just saw a remark on the screen, and I just gotta respond to it.
This one?
Somebody wrote Tank's got way more power than Buddy Ryan, and so. Let me remind a lot of people, and that's fine. We're not talking about in terms of power. We're comparing Tank overall as a skillful boxer. But let me remind you guys of another boxer who had a lot more power than his opponent and got beat up, and that's Deontay, who had a lot of power and lost that fight. And we can argue he also lost the first fight. So power has nothing to do with this. Don't focus so much on power, right? And what Gary said earlier is what fascinated me about Ryan. I'm a Luke Campbell fan. I became a fan of his when he fought Linares. I don't think people understand. You know what it is? I think a lot of boxing fans, because we don't see a lot of these British fighters in the ring so much, so we don't know them so much. Just like a lot of people didn't see Tyson Fury come out and beat Deontay because they just didn't know who he was, right? And we've been watching him and following him. I remember watching Tyson Fury fight Glitchko. But, we don't see a lot of these boxers, so we don't know how good they are. Luke Campbell is very good. He's not a pushover type of fighter. He's and he's got 3 or 4 losses now with Ryan's. Some of those losses, we can even contest them. This is a great fighter. If I became a boxer and my career was, mirrored or duplicated or replicated based on Luke Campbell's, then I would be satisfied when I retired. This is a very good boxer, right? Ryan Garcia beat a very good boxer. I have to say this. Him beating Luke Campbell, to me, is more impressive than Tank Davis beating Santa Cruz, in my opinion, because based on weight and everything else. And what Gary mentioned to me, and what I thought so too, or whatever, what Gary mentioned before, which I was surprised. I thought Luke Campbell would win in a sense that because I thought he was just a much more superior boxer. We didn't even see that. We didn't see Luke, outbox him. So there's no saying, like, I agree with Cortney. Right now, it's 55-45. And as Ryan gets a little older, that might be 50-50 and maybe swing his way. Let me remind you, he's 22 years old. He doesn't have the same in-ring experience as Tank Davis. But also keep in mind, his best friend right now is Canelo, like Cortney's saying, and having that power of proximity around a guy like that who is pound for pound the best right now and obviously a future Hall of Famer changes things for him. The same way being around Floyd Mayweather changes things for Tank, right? The only difference is Ryan just started hanging out with Canelo, started now training with Canelo, this past year. He's going to evolve as a boxer. You're starting to see that right now. And he's very popular. This kid's got a lot to bring to the table. If he fixes certain things, Ryan can beat Tank Davis. He just has to fix it. He can beat. He's got the skill set that if he polishes it up, it could be a bad day for Tank Davis if they ever fought. All right? That's all I got to say.
If Ryan Garcia keep that fight to the outside against Tank, I don't know. I think if Ryan Garcia fights Tank on the outside, I think the certainty that a lot of people are looking at this with dissipates. It's I like Tank. I think Tank, as far as his entertainment value and what he does in the ring, the kind of fights that he makes, and the way that he fights guys, I think that's dynamic. But there comes a point when we have to see more than power, and that's where we see what you really have. And we haven't seen that with Tank. With Ryan Garcia, we've seen it. We just saw it. We saw that, maybe he doesn't have the best chin, but the chin and the resolve that he has behind it is enough to get off the canvas and to finish a fight. And I know a lot of times with boxing, it's very circular. We say, well, we want to see this guy in a situation where he's up against it, or he's got to persevere, or we got to see some character. And then as soon as we see it, we come with criticism. Well, man, he got dropped. So if this person hit him with the same shot, he would drop him. I don't know. I mean, it may be so, but this is the thing that's not certain. We're not certain if Tank, being the shorter fighter, having a drastically shorter reach, we're not sure how Tank navigates inside, in the inside, if Ryan Garcia wants to keep that outside. So, I mean, that's the big intangible. And I think that's why when we look at a matchup or a potential matchup between Tank and Ryan Garcia, having a solid opinion right now, that's going to set you up to have a lot of egg on your face later.
And this whole comparison thing, like if fans want to compare, like if you want to marginalize what Ryan Garcia did to Luke Campbell, then we're going to do the same thing when Tank Davis fought Gamboa. Like if we're going to play that game, we could which remember I told you guys, it looked like he had an Achilles, a torn Achilles in that fight, which ended up being the case. Like, all right, so if that's the same thing, let's give back the same energy to Tank. He couldn't put a guy that's nearly 40 years old with a torn Achilles after the second round. Couldn't put him away. And you're going to talk about Ryan Garcia getting dropped by Campbell and then knocking him out. Like if you're gonna make that comparison, just don't forget about Tank. Don't forget about Tank's performance against Gamboa. All right, that's all I'm going to say.
Just to add to that, just to add to that, just to add to both of your points, I think as spectators, it's really hard to quantify power and how people will react to that power, especially when we're comparing two guys who have not yet fought against each other. But I think what's most important, and I think Tommy said this, is how in the respective fights, how that power is delivered and the maneuver it's delivered and the manner in which it's applied. and that's what we could really base these matchups on, which I think is just as important, aside from just the standalone power of each respective fighter. So just wanted to add to that. So great thoughts from everyone. Let's talk about the other side of the lightweight division. You got Teofimo Lopez out there. You got Devin Haney. There's also talks about, even though this is far-fetched, Teofimo versus Devin Haney, but it's still not very likely. You got Haney, who's most likely, and he mentioned this on the Akin Barak show, I believe, on the Zone, that he's either going to make a mandatory defense against either Jorge Linares or Javier Fortuna. So although that's not a popular fight, I think it's still a good, busy fight for Haney until he fights one of those top guys. But as far as Haney's concerned, I'll just say this about Haney. I think among all the lightweights we've been talking so far, I think Haney's the most technical fighter, at least against when comparing against all those guys. So Gary Kittleson, let me get your thoughts. What's your thoughts on Haney at this point, in this juncture of his career?
I agree with you that Haney looks like he's the classiest boxer of the bunch, for sure. But I also want to preference that with Teofimo Lopez outboxed Lomachenko. He outboxed the Matrix for 7 rounds, right? Clearly outboxed him. And then Loma had to try to get on the inside because he couldn't. Teofimo was out jabbing him. But although Haney's got special skills, he's got really good speed, really good reflexes. I want to see. I think the Fortuna fight, I'm not really into Linares. I think Linares is kind of shot at this point, especially after that last knockout from Cano. I know he came back and he got a knockout in his last fight that was on a Ryan Garcia undercard on Valentine's Day. He still didn't look that good to me. And I thought Prime Linares is good. I just think he's all done. I don't think he's got that left in him. But I think Fortuna makes life tough for everyone. So I'd like to see how. I think Haney handles him. I think Haney outboxed him, but I think that's a good scrap. I think that's a good test for Haney in a stay busy fight. And again, I think Haney, the only question we have about Haney is, does he have the power, right, to really exchange with guys like Teofimo Lopez? I don't think that's his fight. He's got to win him on the outside and going backwards, which he can do. The only thing is, can he keep Tank Davis off him for 12 rounds? If he can, I think he can beat Tank Davis. If Tank Davis is able to get on the inside, it could be night-night for Devin Haney. The interesting fight is Teofimo Lopez, right? Because is it just high-speed chess where they just sit there and box each other from the outside, or does Teofimo Lopez get aggressive and try to bring the fight to him? Those are really interesting fights. And I know I'm going to sound like a hater. I think Devin Haney outboxes Ryan Garcia. Right, Garcia, I don't think he did enough. Although he did better than expected against Boxing Campbell, I don't think over 12 rounds Ryan Garcia can match skills with Devin Haney.
I mean, I can agree with that. I think as far as when you talk about David Haney versus Ryan Garcia, I think David Haney presents a lot of problems for Ryan Garcia. So, especially technical wise, the big question I see is how would Devin Haney react to the power that's presented to him when that problem arises? So that's a very big question. Tommy, let's get your thoughts on what's your thoughts on Devin Haney at this point in junction in his career.
I like Haney, man. I do feel that I would absolutely like to see him show some more power, go find that shit somewhere, get like Mario, eat a mushroom, something, whatever you gonna do so you can get a little bigger, man. I would love to see him put some more crispy up on them punches that he's got. The dude is very, very skillful. And I pretty much agree with what Gary said. I don't think that, he would be able to necessarily keep Tank off. I think that Tank's aggression would end up being too much if he was able to. Yeah, he would be able to outpoint him, I think, because it would be a whole different type of fight. For somebody like Teofimo, I don't think that Haney would pull that off. I think that Teofimo is well rounded enough of a fighter with power, the skill. You add in some speed there, and I think that his whole game would be able to nullify what Haney would come out and have a game plan for against him. Ryan Garcia, I honestly think that would be the most interesting fight right now. That I would like to see if it was matching up. All of these names. I think that right now with the things that they both bring to the table, Ryan and his power. The way that he fights, he's not necessarily a bully in the ring, so that would placate towards Haney's type of style. So I think that one would be the most interesting fight right now to watch. But I still think that it would be a fight that Haney would be able to pull off at this point in time right now. But I think it would be some decent fireworks, and I think that fight would be one where we would actually see Haney show us something that we haven't seen before, because it wouldn't be a high level of aggression. It wouldn't be such superior power against him, but it would be so close to where he would have to channel something different in that fight in order to just stand out and pull it off. So, but I like Haney, but gotta get a little stronger, man, because he's starting to look like pillow hands to me, man.
Great thoughts, Tommy. Cortney, I have a specific question, and also after that, you can branch off to broader thoughts on Haney. As far as Haney, do you think Haney has more to prove than he does with when compared to Tank and Garcia?
He certainly has more to prove. I think with Haney, if we look at the big four at 135, if we look at Teofimo Lopez, if we look at Tank Davis, if we look at Ryan Garcia, and if we look at Devin Haney is, I think he's hands down the best boxer out of all those out of the four. I think as far as Devin Haney's game though, I think with him is he's not a power puncher. I don't think he's a puncher at all. I think he is a 100% skill dude. Tommy said he wishes he could go find some power, eat a mushroom or whatnot. I think we'd all like that, because we all love to see bangers. We all love to see dudes go in there and put dudes on their back. And putting dudes on their backs typically results to putting asses in seats. And that's why Haney is having a dog of a time with as being vocal as he is, with calling people out. That's why nobody really wants to fight him. That's why Ryan Garcia had to fight his life and immediately called out a dude on the complete other side of the street in Tank Davis, because that's where the money's at. There's no money in fighting Devin Haney. So as far as what he has to prove, he doesn't really have to prove it necessarily to people like us who watch boxing. He's got to prove it to the casuals. He's got to prove it to the mainstream fans. He's got to prove it to people who are willing to put $75 down on a pay-per-view or invest $19 a month in a DAZN subscription. Ultimately, those are the ones he has to prove. People who watch boxing know Devin Haney is a special fighter and an immensely skilled one. But as far as what he does and what he does well, I don't think that's conducive to making him an A-side. I think that's just that's just the way of the world, And people said that about Floyd for years. It's like, yo, this dude is skilled as hell, but we need to see him fight better people. And ultimately, when he fought Oscar De La Hoya, even though a lot of even though that was a split decision, even though a lot of people, not including myself, said that it was a fairly close fight, it shot him to that higher level. So. As far as channeling power, I don't think you can do it if that's not what you're gifted with. But as far as I think with Devin Haney, what he has to prove is not in terms of showing something skill wise or doing something outside the box of what he does. I think he has to prove it in attracting better people to come into the ring against him. Because if you look at the four, he has probably fought the lightest competition out of the big four at 135. So basically, we're gonna need to see Devin Haney do what he does and do it best against better people. And how how they get in the ring with them. That's that we might not see that 135. We might we might not see the best of Devin Haney and what he is and what he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to become until he inevitably makes it up to that until he ultimately capitalizes on that threat that he made to Bernard Hopkins when he had the contract to fight Ryan Garcia, waving in front of his face like, fuck it, I'm going to 140. Well, that's where we might see Devin Haney blossom into the fighter he's supposed to be. But I think as far in terms of the business move, because Ryan Garcia wanted that smoke right then and right there. I think that was a dumb move for him not to take that fight right then and right there. I don't know if he made that call because he didn't think he thought Ryan Garcia was a higher risk than he would be reward or whatnot. But now it's the tables have turned, and you got Ryan Garcia with the eyes of the boxing world on him, calling you, and you're in the stadium, or in the arena or whatever, call out somebody who wasn't even there. So that's how that goes. But I mean, in terms of how these guys potentially match up in the 135 scene, I think there's a lot of posturing. I think there's a lot of Twitter fingers going on right now, and I think there's guys popping a whole lot of bubble gum. And as far as all this, as far as what we're pretty much wildly speculating on, as far as a Ryan Garcia versus a Tank, Teofimo Lopez versus a Haney, or whatnot, this is how it's going to go. Teofimo Lopez has a mandatory for his IBF belt against George Kambosos. George Kambosos is already affiliated with Top Rank. Do we know that's going to happen next for Teofimo Lopez? As far as Devin Haney, I made a post the other day in the group where he's calling out all these names, and then at the end he says, "Well, my mandatory is Javier Fortuna." There's also been talk of Jorge Linares being inserted in there. I'm with Gary. I think Jorge Linares is too shot for that fight to do anything for Devin Haney. So if he has the two, he's just going to go ahead and take care of business against Javier Fortuna. As far as Javier Fortuna goes in that matchup, I've really soured on Javier Fortuna. Gary said he makes life difficult for everybody. He didn't really make it that difficult for Adrian Granados. That was a fight me and Tommy were in the house for, where he found an excuse when he was faced with adversity. So I think Devin Haney is a guy who's going to give him a lot more adversity than Adrian Granados would. But yeah, as far as Devin Haney and for all his talk right now, obviously we're going to see him go in that direction to fight Javier Fortuna. And then as far as Ryan Garcia, I think he might be the one who actually fights Jorge Linares, or they resurrect somebody who was hot at one point at 135, but it's cooled off a little bit. There's the Terry Flanagans, there's the Orlando Cruzes you can pull out of the hat or whatever. I think he fights one of those guys who was hot at one point, but is now a little bit past it. Just to get just to get a name of a future or of a past title holder to put on his resume to build the future for him. And then as far as Tank Davis goes, I know that Gary Russell has been popping a lot of noise at him for a long time. That's a fight I would actually love to see at 130. I think Gary Russell Jr. asks a lot of questions of Tank that have never been that have never been asked before, and I'm eager to see what kind of answers he would come up with those for those questions. But I mean, as far as all the the big four fighting each other, it's just too fragmented. We're not going to see anything immediately in this first half of 2021. If we see anything from these four interacting cross pollinating with each other in 2021, so I think these guys are doing a lot of talking. It's getting a lot of people talking, but I think they're saying each other's names as a means to get people to tune in for fights they're going to have against lesser opponents. And unfortunately, that's the trap that we as boxing fans always go for.
Hey, you even saw post fight, at the Garcia fight, like you said, Haney was there, and they've got that video of them just dapping it up, and Haney's talking about he bet on Garcia, and Garcia's like, yeah, I told you should have bet more on me, and all of that. They're getting real buddy in there, and
They're actually homies. They
yeah,
were on the amateur circuit together. They're
yeah,
actually homies.
and that's what I'm saying. So that speaks towards your point of just saying names out there to just kind of bubble up everything and get more going when it comes to whatever the next fights that they're gonna have, getting those viewers.
Didn't they fight in the amateurs, the two of them?
6 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were on the same amateur circuit. There's actually video of them post. There's past Instagram posts of them posted up with each other, kicking it at each other's house, playing video games at the club together and stuff like that. So that is what it is. You take that for all it's worth. Have we seen guys get in with each other who were cool, who were friendly? And put it to the side, yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like you scratch the surface, you look a little deeper, you see what I like to call the WWE factor in a lot of what they're doing.
Yeah. Gary, what were you saying?
They fought in the amateurs. They both fought good. So we gotta have that game. Although I think handily. I just Haney's skill set is a different level, I think, than Ryan.
Before we go on, Michael, what's your thoughts on Haney at this juncture right now?
Very skillful fighter. The risk reward isn't there for most fighters to fight him, right? Yeah. He's been calling out fighters for the past 2 years, and he's a young guy. He's 22 years old. But and Cortney hit the nail on the head when he said that people want to see, or rather knockouts, or a knockout artist is what puts asses in seats, and that's true, right? So a guy like Ryan Garcia is going to be naturally more popular. Guys like Tank Davis are going to be more popular because that's what the vast majority of boxing fans, when I say boxing fans, I'm talking about casuals. That's what they want to see, right? I respect Devin Haney's skill set. He's one of the most skillful, if not the most skillful fighter in that division. Taking away maybe Teofimo, because I think Teofimo could beat him from a technical standpoint. I think Teofimo he can stand toe to toe and outbox him. In my personal opinion, I mean he did it against Lomachenko, and in me, I had Lomachenko obviously as one of the top 2, top 3 pound for pound boxers, and it's obviously not because of his knockout power because he has none or not. It's limited at that division, right? I always said that Lomachenko at 135. He's always going to be the smallest guy in the ring. Always. That's not his division. At 130, he never loses, right? But at 135, that's tough to be able to go. Like, I don't think people understand, like, against Luke Campbell, Linares, being able to come in as the smaller guy, naturally the smaller guy, and be able to put both of those two guys away, that's a great accomplishment if you really dissect their bodies, their frames, everything. He's just that much smaller, right? I saw him in person at Madison Square Garden. Guy's tiny, legitimately tiny, But back to Devin Haney. Yeah, I mean, he's got like the Bubu Andrade factor. No, nobody really wants to fight him. The risk reward, right? It's like Bubu Andrade. He's the 135 version of Bubu Andrade. That's what he is, right? That's exactly what he is. Bubu Andrade's, right? Both of them very skillful, but there's no reward to fighting him. None whatsoever. It's kind of like a career killer if you do and you lose. Right? It's kind of why people avoid Bubu Andrade, right? It's kind of, I feel like that's why Canelo kind of left that division, because at some point he would have to face Bubu, and that's Bubu Andrade's skill set poses a problem for anybody. I don't care. I know Canelo's great, but even with Canelo, like it's an issue, right? That's pretty much it. Look, what I'm happy about is that division's pretty stacked with guys like Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Tank Davis, right? Teofimo Lopez. Lomachenko still has probably another 3-4 years left in boxing. So we as fans, we got a lot to look forward. It's a matter of making those matches. When it's going to happen, I don't know. Keep in mind, guys, they're both 20. Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney are both 22 years old, right? They're babies. Like, I almost feel like they just started. They just started being in front of the mainstream boxing. Right, they're not going to risk they're not going to risk their careers yet. Although I thought that the Luke Campbell fight was a big risk for Ryan Garcia because of the skill set that Luke Campbell has. But again, he was able to win, and like Cortney mentioned before, his ability to get up from the canvas and show his type of fortitude and what he's built, what he's made out of, that's a big problem for a lot of guys, right? Let me give you an example. I think moving into a different division, the fact that Tyson Fury was able to get up round 12 against Deontay, I think that mentally fucked with him for a long time. You understand? And watching it, if I'm him watching it over and over and over, to watch his body fall the way it fell and still be able to get up, to me mentally, I think it did something to him. I personally do think that happened to him. You know, I really do. You know, and with a lot of guys, like to watch a guy like that get hit, he got hit with a strong punch by Luke, you know, and he caught him right on the button. To be able to see a guy go down, get up 10 seconds later, put the pressure back on you, you know, Luke Campbell's got to be like, God damn, like, you know, I'm fucked. Like, this is going to be a tough night for me.
You know, Mike, the scariest thing, though, is you mentioned these guys only being 22. If I'm not mistaken, Teofimo Lopez is only about 22 or 23 himself, and he's already risked it all. And that's why I say in that equation, I said it before, and I'm going to reiterate it. Teofimo Lopez, if he fought any of those guys tonight, he bombs on them.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Teofimo's got some real. I mean, we're talking about power. Teofimo's got it. I personally think Teofimo's got the most amount of power out of all of them. You know, we've seen him knock guys out in the ways that, like, that's unbelievable. And he's like, if you look at their bodies, like Teofimo's a big guy. Like Teofimo's days at 135 is numbered. Like he's big. I'm surprised that he was able to. Like, I'm literally surprised he was able to make weight against Lomachenko. He's not a small guy. This is a guy that we'll see at some point in the future. I'm not going to say near, but Teofimo's going to be at 147. He will be fighting in the welterweight division.
Great points all around. So it's going to be very interesting, the lightweight division. So moving forward, Canelo Alvarez was briefly mentioned. So that's what we're talking about. So Canelo Alvarez, he defeated Callum Smith not too long ago by unanimous decision at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. With that win, he won Smith's WBA and the ring middleweight titles, and he also won the vacant WBC Super Middleweight title, which was previously held by David Benavidez, which adds to his already illustrious career as the 4-weight division champion and #1 pound-for-pound ranked fighter at this moment. As we all know, as far as the fight itself, not much really to analyze. My opinion, dominated all 12 rounds. He took advantage of, despite the height difference, was no problem for Canelo. Aimed straight for the body. He also targeted Callum Smith's left hand, I believe, heavily bruised it, which he made a savage remark about it, like, "Hey, is your arm okay?" So, which I thought kind of was kind of funny to me. But aside from that, another win for the books. But going forward, as we all know, Canelo Alvarez announced that he's staying at super middleweight to unify the rest of the division, which leaves out the possibility of any Triple G fight at middleweight. So right now we got Caleb Plant, who's the IBF champion, Billy Joe Saunders, the WBO. The other two champions at the super middleweight division. So, Tommy, let me get your thoughts on this. What's your thoughts on Canelo Alvarez? What's your thought on his recent win and his decision to stay at 168 as his current campaign division to fight at?
Short and sweet, man. So, like you said, with the fight, totally dominant. He was totally dominant in that fight. And, you highlighted the main point of the fight was, like, he made it a point to just nullify, what Callum Smith was going to be able to do. And he beat the shit out of his arm. like to where it looked like he had like a baseball in his arm, like, you know, after that fight. And he intentionally did that. So that was a super old school, you know, very experienced veteran move. So I mean, it was like he had to find something special to do in the fight. So completely dominated, pillar to post. And just as far as his decision, I applaud his decision. You know, after he did it, immediately there was a lot of people just saying, "Oh, well, you know, he's ducking. You know, he's in no chance for Charlo." All this different stuff. I mean, they quoted themselves saying, like, they feel right now this is his prime weight. So I don't see a problem with him vacating the belt, which he hasn't fought in that division in what, 2.5, 3 years. Like there's no problem with that, you know. And either way it goes, there was going to be some hate. You know, we know this with Canelo. We see this all the time with Canelo. Hell, sometimes we're part of it. But you know, but either way it goes, you know, he did the right thing there, because if he would have just held the belt and kept lobbying back and forth between weight classes and stuff like that, people would talk shit about that. So he did the right thing. Fuck this belt. You know, y'all can take it. Y'all can have that division. I'm staying here where I know I can do what I'm doing right here, like against somebody like Callum Smith, and I've got the rest of these next fights lined up of what my next moves are. Y'all can keep that, you know. So I don't have any problem with it, and I actually respect the fact that he let the belt go.
Yeah, Tom, I can agree with that. He has every right to stay where he's at right now, and he's earned that right. So, Cortney, let's get your thoughts on Canelo's your thoughts on Canelo's recent win over Callum Smith and his decision to stay at 168.
Not surprising at all. I mean, he's even alluded to it numerous times that he's done with 160. I think how we saw him look against Callum Smith and his body type, and you know, that's the fight he fought after going all the way up to 175, where a lot of people thought he would be out of his depth up there. And that, I mean, despite the final result, in that fight where he knocked out Sergey Kovalev at 175 to win a strap up there, that was not an easy fight for him. You know, that was not an easy task. You know, that he did at 175. So to go from that to going back down to 160 when there's really nobody of consequence at 160 besides, you know, a Boo Boo Andrade who nobody wants to fight, who's probably the most skilled guy down there, but he does not bring. I mean, want to shout out the Portuguese speaking community in America and around the world. But really, that's his only base. That's, you know, those are the only people who are really rocking for Boo Boo Andrade out there. And you know, in a scattered pocket in the Northeast, with people from Boston, Providence, Rhode Island. I think he makes his home in New Hampshire now. So I mean, you got New England with you, but boxing is not really what it was up there. I think Boo Boo Andrade might be the last, you know, notable person to come out of New England, you know, in recent memory. You know, hey, sorry, Antoine. You know, shout out to Antoine Wilkes, who's Boston strong out there. But I mean, really, you know, that with Boo Boo Andrade, there's really no money. There's no demographic, and there's a lot of risk. So I mean, but the thing is, Boo Boo Andrade is a dude you can duck without taking too much shit for it. You know, and the people who are holding Boo Boo Andrade over Canelo are people who do not like him, and that's the name they're pulling out of the hat. You know, they're doing that before the Charlo. You know what I'm saying? Before Charlo. So, but I mean, like Tommy said, he hasn't fought there in 2.5 years. He, you know, Triple G is campaigning. He's back. You know, he's back looking like he's at least got a glimpse of his previous form. But the argument that Canelo has made is that he's finished with that business, at least for now. In that, you know, he's already beaten him. I think there can be a third fight between Canelo and Triple G, but that's pretty much almost certainty that Triple G is going to have to come up to 168 to make that fight. And I think that's the reason why Triple G fought Steve Rolls at Madison Square Garden at the 164-pound catch weight, because he wanted to test and to see how his body would react and how he could perform with a few extra pounds on him, because he knows he really wants to get Triple G one more time before he exits the game. And I think he knows, and his team is advising him that if he wants that fight, it's going to have to be at 168. So, when the fight that when the most lucrative fight at 160 is a guy who knows he's going to have to come up, and fight you 8 pounds, that's pretty much all the motivation to stay is out the door. There was a lot of chatter about Errol Spence coming up to 160 to make that fight, but I think with Canelo, he realizes that fight would probably be bogged down a lot in negotiations, just by virtue of how the money would break down and what outlet it would be broadcast on. Even though Canelo is a free agent per se, he is still closely aligned with DAZN. So I mean that would be an impediment as far as making that fight with Errol Spence regarding that. But I mean, as far as 168 in the immediate future for Canelo Alvarez, we already know that he has agreed to fight his mandatory for that WBC belt that he just picked up against the opponent of Turkey. I'm not going to even attempt to say the dude's name because it's I just end up butchering it. But we all know he's going to fight the Turk.
You have any homework on that guy, by the way? Any?
His name is I think his last name is Yildirim. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But there was talk initially of that fight being a homecoming fight for Canelo down in Guadalajara. That, as we all know and we've all seen in the news, Mexico is being particularly hard hit right now by the COVID virus. So he's already saying that's going to be his next fight to take care of that mandatory, and it's going to be somewhere in the U.S., probably going to be behind closed doors, seeing that they're state by state is enacting new with protocols to combat the COVID-19 virus. So he knows. I mean, with it's a mandatory. Nobody really wants to see that fight, and also the revenue stream from that fight is going to be limited because it's probably not going to be in front of fans, admission paying fans. So I think his reasoning behind that is just go ahead, get that out of the way. And then that puts that fight is floated for being in February. He fights that fight. That realigns him to be able to fight on the dates that he likes, as far as being the Cinco de Mayo fight in May and the September dates for Mexican Independence Day. So I think after he deals with Yildirim as far as the mandatory, then we're gonna really see the concerted efforts to make the fight with Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant. And I think Billy Joe Saunders is probably going to be next because it's going to be easier to make with Billy Joe Saunders being aligned with DAZN. And then probably while he's in preparation for that fight, on the back end, they'll be doing negotiations with Plant and PBC to see how the money and the network's going to break down with that. So I think that's pretty much my look into the future as it concerns Canelo Alvarez.
Great stuff, Cortney. Michael, specific question actually for you, and you could branch off to the larger question that was posed. Would you have a problem with Golovkin going up to 168 to fight Canelo, and how would you actually see that fight play out?
Have a problem. I just think that Triple G is just it's a better fighter based on his weight and his power at 160. He's just naturally a 160 guy. In the past, a lot of people would think, oh, he can get to 164 and 168. He doesn't fit at 160. And I think now at this point with Triple G's age, we don't know if it was father time or not against Sergey. We don't know, but I had Triple G losing that fight by 1 round. Could have gone either way, but at this point with Canelo maturing so much as a fighter, and not only that, but his defense being so underrated. If you just watch that fight against Danny Jacobs and watch how he fought Danny Jacobs and how great he was defensively, I don't think people give Canelo enough credit. But at 168 and just seeing how comfortable he was against Smith, seeing how comfortable he was against Kovalev, I don't think that Triple G wins that fight. You might even see Triple G go down. Even with one of the best chins in the world, the guy's pushing already 40. It doesn't get any easier for him. But who knows? I would still see it. I would love to see it. I would love to see if Triple G can pull a victory, but I don't think that's possible. He lost the second fight. We can argue it could have been a draw, but in my opinion, he lost the second fight. I still think Triple G got. I'm not gonna say robbed. I'm not gonna call it robbed, but I still think that Triple G did more than enough to make it apparent that he won the first fight. I think it's over. I think that allure, Triple G versus Canelo, with the time in the past 4 or 5 years, I think that allure, that excitement we had, I think that's gone. I'd rather watch other fighters. Look, I'll tell you, a fight that I'm actually excited to watch is him against Caleb Plant. I think I like Caleb Plant as a boxer. He is skillful. He's got power. I don't think he could beat Canelo, but that's a fight that I think is probably going to be a little bit closer than what people think it would be. I'm more excited about that fight than a potential matchup with Triple G and Canelo. It's done. It's over. I don't want to watch it no more. It's over. Let's go. Put it back in the books. That's it. Let Triple G end his career. I don't think Triple G has more than a year and a half left in boxing, in my honest opinion. Let him ride out to the sunset and in good fashion, and that's it.
Great stuff, Michael. Also, Gary, your thoughts on Canelo, the fight, and him going at 168?
I agree with everything Mike said about Triple G. I think Canelo's done with that. I thought the second when Canelo won convincingly, like it was good enough for me. Canelo won that fight. I know a lot of people disagree, but in my personal opinion, I thought Canelo won clearly, so I'm fine with it. Like it was closure in that. Canelo is the star of the sport. So if you want to fight him, it's going to be at his terms, which means it's going to be at 168. Boo Boo said he'd go to 68 to fight Billy Joe. If he go to 68 to fight Billy Joe, he'll go to 68 to fight Canelo. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's an interesting fight. The only thing, my only knock on Boo Boo, I think he's tremendously skilled. He seems to get complacent at times. He starts really well, and then he kind of just relaxes too much. That's the only problem I see with Boo Boo. I don't know. Canelo's really good defensively. I think Canelo beats Boo Boo, but it's a really interesting style. And Cortney made a good point. It's the haters always have someone. Floyd was like Paul Williams. Oh, Paul Williams would have beat his ass. He ducked Paul Williams. I feel like with Canelo, it's Boo Boo. Oh, Boo Boo's all wrong for him. Boo Boo would be. It's you can't literally fight every single person, right? I mean, you only fight twice a year, although this year Canelo will probably fight 3 times. There's promoters, there's issues, there's managerial issues, there's just timing issues. You literally can't fight everyone. Canelo fights the best. Floyd fought the best. Look through someone's resume, there's always going to be one name not on it. And then they're going to say that's the person you ducked. Especially when that person, like Paul Williams or Andre's, not really a draw. Right? There's no reason, really, unless, for Canelo to fight Andre. Just there was no real reason for Floyd to fight Paul Williams, right? But to this day, right, I still feel like the Floyd haters say, well, he never fought Paul Williams. Paul Williams would have knocked him out, right? But you can ignore those people. I mean, they're never going to be happy. I agree with Cortney. I think he fights 3 times this year. I think Canelo fights Ivani Yildirim. And Yildirim fought a fairly close fight with Anthony Durrell. I think that was the last time he fought. And then he got destroyed by Chris Eubank when they were both on the come up. I don't think this guy's going to last very long. I think this is basically a sparring session for Canelo, which is why he'll be back a couple months later in May with a real fight, which I think will be Billy Joe. And then, remember, this is just a 2-fight deal that Canelo has with DAZN, which I think is Yildirim and Billy Joe. And then he's free to negotiate with whoever he wants, which I think is Caleb Plant. It's got to fight with Caleb Truax at some point in the near future, right? February, March, something like that. I think you're going to see, and that's a really interesting fight. Andre and Caleb Plant are the two guys stylistically, I think, give Canelo the most trouble. I'm not saying they necessarily win, but those are the two fights I would look at. It's like those could be trouble for Canelo. As far as Canelo's performance, I mean, there's not much to critique. I honestly think, and I didn't think Canelo was going to win. I didn't see a path to victory for Smith. But I thought he'd be competitive in the fight. Right? Like, I didn't think it would be a complete wash beatdown that it was. I think considering the level of opposition, this may have been Canelo's best performance.
Definitely agree. Yeah, and I agree with Gary. I thought that it was going to be a lot closer in terms of competition. I thought it would be more competitive. I almost turned off the TV after like round 8. It was just a bloodbath. It was just ridiculous. I mean, the only thing I give Smith credit for is not crumbling. Honestly, that's what I give him credit for. But why? I don't know why he shied away from his jab. Like you're the bigger guy. Try to like bully him around the ring a little bit. Nothing. He was getting bullied. It was just ridiculous.
The thing is, I think everyone's saying that Pelican, he's a Smith brother. I know he's tall, but he doesn't fight tall. He fights on the inside, right? Like you could tell, like early in the first round or two, like he tried to use his jab, but just not how. I know. I get he's a tall, longer guy. And Canelo's real short for that division, but he doesn't fight tall, and it wasn't working for him. And like I knew at the end of the second round, I said, "Oh, this is gonna be bad." Like I thought at a certain point, Caleb Smith's corner probably should have stepped in and stopped it. Like the beatdown was that bad. There was absolutely no path to victory. There was no path for him to even be competitive. Right. So it's like, I know it's the biggest fight of your life. This is what you trained your whole life for. I don't want to stop it prematurely, but at a certain point, that beating was unnecessary.
I think his brother's performance was better than his.
Yeah, I agree.
And I was picking, like I said, I was picking Kalen to be. I was picking that fight to be just a lot more competitive, just on the strength of size. And I mean, I was wrong. It was embarrassing. If I'm Kalen, I wouldn't even go back in the ring. That's how embarrassing that was, in my opinion.
If we look at Canelo, though, he actually turns in very brilliant performances against tall guys. I don't know if it's how he strategizes or what the strategy he implements against tall fighters, but he goes at guys who are that tall very aggressively. I know a lot of people dismiss the Rocky Fields fight, but I mean Rocky Fields actually wasn't a slouch. You know what I'm saying? He fought a lot of guys who were at the echelons of that 168, because the thing is, the 168 division is actually, if you look at it as a whole, it's actually popping as far as the competitiveness of the matchups more over in England and Europe. The guys that we see with the belts or who are dominant 168, they actually only measure a very small sampling of the talent that's in that division. So for Rocky Fielding to be a former British, former Commonwealth, former European, and then held one of the minor WBA belts, that speaks of volumes, and and in turn that performance he turned in against Rocky Fielding, who was a tall guy himself. For me, that's where Canelo kind of he painted on the canvas in terms of what we could expect against Caleb Smith. And the only thing that surprised me about that was the result. I didn't think Caleb Smith was going to go the 12 rounds. So that's where Caleb Smith surprised me, is that he showed enough resolve to go the 12 rounds, but it probably should have. if we're gonna be honest, Caleb Smith's corner probably should have done more to preserve his career by ending that fight 2 to 3 rounds earlier, before the final bell. But I want to backtrack, is because we were on Boo Boo a little earlier.
Go ahead.
I think Andre, if he's calling anybody out, he should be calling out Triple G. Because I think Triple G is not. I think Triple G at this point, he's got 3 more fights on the deal with DAZN, so that's that's going to take him out to about another 2 years. If he fights twice a year, and COVID clears up, and we're able to get more regularly scheduled fights. But I think Triple G, he's looking at it in terms of legacy, and I think Triple G, he's gonna look. I think he would be looking at it if that fight was proposed to him, as far as looking at back where everybody who was anybody at 160 was ducking him, and now he's kind of got a guy on the other side of it who is in that position where he was. I think Triple G is the kind of person who would be, in a sense, stand up enough to give Booba Andrade that fight. And that's a fight I think if it happens next year or in the later part of this year, I think that's a fight that Booba Andrade wins against Triple G, simply for the fact that Triple G will have been too far past it. But I mean, it's an intriguing matchup if you look at what Andrade does very well, which what Triple G does very well, and just how they look at on paper and all the intangibles. I think that'd be a very fun fight to watch.
Great points all around. So we're gonna move on to the next segment of the last segment of episode 64, which is my favorite, discussing our individual pound for pound lists. So I'm gonna pull up. You briefly saw the screen, so I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Our list. Just give me a few seconds, guys. Can you guys see that really clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here's our individual pound for pound list for January 2021. What I'm gonna say right now is these are our own individual lists, but they will be averaged out with the other lists that were submitted on our website. They're gonna be averaged out, and then that average will be the actual published pound for pound rankings on our website. But since we have so many lists, it seems logical just to discuss our own. So we got Michael's list, we got Cortney's list, you got mine up there, you got Tommy, you got Gary. The only thing I'll say about mine is the biggest takeaway from my list is that from previous lists, I've been always ranking Terrence Crawford above Errol Spence, but I think at this point, in my opinion, I gotta rank Errol Spence above Terrence Crawford. I think Errol, he's been. We all know he went through that car accident, and to right off the bat, not take a tune-up fight, go straight at the jugular with Danny Garcia, and to outclass him the way that he did, and in doing so, I think he's earned enough in my book to be ranked at least above Terrence Crawford in the pound for pound ranks. So that's why I know Cortney. I'll give you a chance to speak on that, but that's just my biggest takeaway. Of course, I got Canelo at number one. Naoya Inoue, another big takeaway from my list. I got him there at number two. On average, I've been ranking him 3 and 4 for the past 3 lists, but I got him. I bumped him up a little bit. So that's my list, as you can see, 1 through 10. So let me go around. Let's start with you, Michael. Give us your biggest highlights from your list. What should we take away from your list?
The same thing you mentioned. I always had Bud Crawford ahead of Spence. And then after Spence fought Sean Porter, came back obviously from that devastating accident, which he's very lucky to be alive, let alone in the ring fighting, and still at the high caliber he fought. To come back in and take a tune-up fight against Danny Garcia and wash him in that ring the way he did was enough to convince me that based on the strength of opponents, that right now I'm giving him the edge. And that, look, I give him the edge on the rankings. I'm not giving him on the edge of a head-to-head fight against Bud. I still say Bud, in my opinion, has a 55-45 chance of beating Errol Spence based on what I've seen Bud in the last couple of years, and also based on skill set, movement, etc. It's just a testament that Errol Spence just has had better opponents in the last year and a half. Having said that, I mean, other than that, I think my list is pretty straightforward. I couldn't leave Lomachenko off my list. Because of my love with Gennady, I couldn't leave him off my list either. I have high regard for Estrada. Tyson Fury, obviously, in my opinion, top 5. He could have gone 4. I could have put him in the same spot that Cortney has him in now. Obviously, Teofimo. I wish to even put him up higher, but I just think that Usyk is there and he deserves to be there. And that's pretty much it. I don't think it was as hard of a list to come up with as it used to be in the past. I think it was pretty straightforward, other than, probably nine. Nine could have been interchangeable with other people. I thought about maybe putting Manny Pacquiao there. I could have put Jermell Charlo there as well. It was a toss-up. But again, my love for Gennady Golovkin put him there. So I'm not going to lie, I was biased.
Great stuff, Mike. Courtney, give us your biggest takeaways from your list, and you're welcome to mention our list. Any disagreements you may have, go ahead, man.
I'm not going to target anybody's list individually because I'm on my phone, so I kind of had to expand it to look at it where get a glimpse of what everybody else had, and also I didn't quite remember the order I put some of mine in, and I'm going to do that again while I'm speaking. But I mean, the main thing is to put Errol Spence above Terrence Crawford. I think that's insulting when you look at what Terrence Crawford has done as far as the resume and as far as his career. I'm sorry, but as long as those two are both undefeated fighters, you cannot not give consideration and just do consideration to the fact that Terrence Crawford is a 3-division champion. And he's, he's the first person to be undisputed and unify all 4 belts at 140. While those two are both, and I think, I understand people putting a lot of weight and giving a lot of credence to Errol Spence coming back from the car accident the way he did, but I mean, in terms of ranking, I think you got to leave the emotional. I think we got to leave the SP factor out of that, and just look at the raw in the ring accomplishments of these guys. And while these two are hovering each other, and we're still analyzing and breaking down the intangibles and how these two would match up head to head. If we're looking at it, you got to give just due consideration to Terrence Crawford. So the entirety of his resume. And I believe because of that, I think it's. I know people. I can't say you can't do it because some of y'all have done it.
I mean,
but in my mind, it is unconscionable to rate Errol Spence over Terrence Crawford. But I know there's going to be some back and forth on that, so I'll go and I'll look at some of the other names. I've highlighted. I mean, Manny Pacquiao at number 10, I got to put him in the list for the same reason. As long as Manny Pacquiao is an active fighter and he holds a strap, a major strap at that, in a hot division at 147, and he's coming off a win, he's got to be in that top 10. He barely squeaked in there, but I mean, I think the last couple of slots are always the hardest to fill out for people's when people tabulate their top 10s. I know it is for me, but I mean, I couldn't let it rock without putting Manny Pacquiao in there when I'm considering that he's still active. He still holds one of the 4 major belts and probably the most talent-laden division right now. And I mean, I think this might surprise some looking at my list, but welcome Tyson Fury.
Yep.
Hey, hate him or love him, the man can fight his ass off, and by virtue of not only the accomplishment and what he did against Deontay Wilder, but how he did it and how emphatically he did it, and he shocked the world. Not necessarily. I think some people were picking Tyson Fury to win the rematch just because they love picking against Deontay Wilder, but even those people, they had no fucking clue that Tyson Fury was going to go in there and he was going to do that to Deontay Wilder. I personally think he broke Deontay Wilder as a fighter. I think the damage that he did was bad. Saying he put it on him in the ring. I think that was bad from a physical standpoint, but I think the real damage done to Deontay Wilder is the mental state, and I don't think Deontay Wilder will ever recover from that. I don't think we will ever come anywhere close to seeing the same Deontay Wilder again, because with Deontay Wilder, the power, the God-gifted right hand was was the ultimate equalizer, but it's kind of like Samson getting his locks chopped off. He does not have he was in a situation where that was taken away from him, and he didn't have anything else. And and now that question will always be in the back of his mind. And from what we've seen as far as him firing firing Breland, and the statements he's made in social media, even though he is angling to get the finish out the trilogy, I think it's really hard to believe that we're going to see Deontay Wilder retake the throne and the mantle at heavyweight. And if you can do that to the longest reigning heavyweight champion in recent memory, you not only got to go on the top 10, but you have to have a prominent place on the top 10. And Tyson Fury not only makes my list for the first time, but he enters it in a top 5 position.
Great stuff, Cortney. Great stuff. Tommy, what is the biggest takeaways we could take from your list? Biggest highlights.
So I agree with a lot of what Cortney said when it came down to like the welterweights and stuff like that. I actually left Pacquiao off the list. He barely missed my list. I did put Gervonta Davis in my list. That's my one kind of wild card on my list, is the fact that I put him on there. And I've done this a few different times. Like when we talk, like right now, we're talking a lot about where Terrence Crawford deserves to be. And I had Terrence Crawford very high on my list early on, before a lot of people would put him high on the list. And this is kind of some of those same things, not to compare him to Terrence Crawford, but just looking forward into what we see, what we feel we're going to see, out of these fighters as well. It's the same reason why, on that flip side of what Cortney was saying is, Manny Pacquiao is still an active fighter. His career is still greater than pretty much everybody on all of our lists. And he does still hold a major strap, but he's either down low on our list or not on some list, and everything comes with a little bit of additional grain of salt, and so I felt that at this point in time I was going to give Gervonta some a little bit of a head of the game love and throw him on the list. I did definitely feel that Jermell Charlo deserved to make that list, and based off of what we saw Teofimo do, I put him in that top 5. I did put Errol Spence above Terrence Crawford, just one spot, with kind of a blended perspective of what others have said, like Gomes, as far as what we've seen. He came back from that fight. He's had back to back major pay-per-view fights. And I felt that was deserving, on top of me just you can call it a little bit biased, as far as the fact that I have been going with Terrence Crawford so highly for so long, that at this point I really want to see him. I really want to see him show what we all know he can do. And I feel the same way like Gomes. If it is a head-to-head, I do still have him above slightly in that fight head-to-head against Spence. But a lot of my list was close to the same, other than the fact that I did take Lomachenko all the way off the list. He did not make my list, and added Gervonta Davis and Charlo. And yeah, I mean, I know I'm gonna get something for Tank hitting that list, but that's all right. I'm willing to ride with it and willing to see where it goes. So let's get it.
He wants to. Tommy, you're gonna sink with the burning ship.
Fanboy.
I ain't a fanboy, but I'm willing to ride with it. I'm gonna show some love on it. Ain't getting no higher than 10.
Great stuff. Last but not least, Gary, what's your biggest takeaways that we should take from your list? Hold on. Gary, unmute.
I have no problem with Pacquiao being on the list. Like, he's good enough. He deserves to be on the list. I didn't put him on the list because he didn't fight in 2020 and doesn't have anything scheduled yet. So I know he still has the belt, but I didn't put him on because he didn't fight in 2020. But there's none, like, if you put him on his list, if you put him on your list, like, that's completely reasonable. The other thing is, I wasn't ready to take Loma off. I had Loma at number 2 before the loss to Teofimo Lopez. And, I thought Teofimo did a pretty good number on him, but I didn't want to take him all the way off, so I put him at 10. I agree with Cortney. I don't see how, and I value multiple weight division world titles, right? I don't know how you could Crawford, because all Crawford's done in 3 weight classes. A new weight's done it in 3 weight classes. That was real tough. I put a new weight over Crawford. You could flip that. And then 4, 5, 6, and 7 were real tight. I gave love to little guys. I got Estrada higher on my list than y'all, I think. Right? Yeah. And Kazuto Ioka. I don't know if you guys saw the UFC fight, but he destroyed Tanaka. He's a 4-division weight champion. He's got with him Tanaka, Cintron, Palikte in the last year and a half. That was good enough to put him on my list. And Charlo's got 3 belts in a really competitive weight class, so I thought he had to be on the list. And then I couldn't leave Loma off, so I put Loma at 10.
Great. Cortney, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I want to add something in regard to my list as far as a highlight. When we look at man, and I lost my train. I lost my train of thought. Let me look at the list to see where I was going with this. But oh yeah, actually wasn't on my list. I was really I talked about adding, Pacquiao just squeaking in at number 10. For me, when I was compiling mine, I was really conflicted as far as if I wanted to omit Manny Pacquiao or I wanted to add Estrada in at that number 10 spot. And for me, I couldn't quite pull the trigger on Estrada, even though I pretty much think he's been hovering on everybody's for in the past couple years. And I've seen some people have him, low on theirs. Or some people say they left him off, but they were really thinking about putting him on there. And he's one of those fighters who I never really quite put on my list, but I'm always thinking about it. But for me, Estrada, what's going to get him on that list for me is if he can do the job against Roman Gonzalez in March. If for me, if he they fought, they fought one of the I think they fought one of the greatest fights of this millennium and this century. That nobody really knew about until like way after the fact, when Roman Gonzalez really started getting shine. But I think everybody who has seen that fight or who is familiar with that fight and that matchup, these two absolutely went to war. That was a brutal fight. That was a fight where they both left a little themselves in the ring against each other. Roman Gonzalez barely squeaked that out. But I think it would be hard to contest if it had gone the other way or it had been ruled a draw or whatever. But if Estrada can come back and get his revenge in that fight or make that right, I think for me, I have no choice but to include Estrada on my list after that.
Tommy, you really did Lomachenko dirty this time, huh?
Hey,
I'm not mad.
I'm gonna let him know.
hey, Teofimo did him dirty too.
I'm gonna let him know. What's the future for Lomachenko moving forward? Like, who does he fight? Like there's.
Well, we know it's damn soon to be at 130.
Yeah. Who does he fight?
I mean, Teofimo get him so dirty, he might want to explore 126.
Man.
But I think 130 has been his best division, and I think I think if we look at the names at 130, those are all fights that are fun fights to watch. If you look at him against Herring or Frampton or Valdez or Burchell, or if they can somehow make him and Tank happen, which we know they won't, but or secure Stevenson, who's at 130. So even though I think they need to give Stevenson a year or two before they throw him in with Lomachenko, but all those fights are fun to watch. because Lomachenko is just so, you know what I'm saying? The guy, he got masterclass against Teofimo. But I'm not one of those people who I wasn't so caught up in hatred for Lomachenko, even though I really hate his fans. But I've never hated him. So, you know what I'm saying? I still have enough respect and I still get enough enjoyment out of watching Lomachenko to where I recognize the guy is perpetual motion. He is, you know what I'm saying? He's an absolute, the guy, it's like when Sergio Martinez was doing his thing back in the day. I always felt blessed to be able to witness that level of skill in the ring. And so, you know what I'm saying? You factor that in. Anybody you put Lomachenko in there with, especially in a division that's buzzing like 130, those are good fun fights to watch. Good, clean fun. Even though I don't think the result's clean. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of people with their faces swole and their noses bloody and their eyes bashed up. But you know, we don't watch the ballet. So I mean, that 130 Lomachenko, I think there's a lot of good fights to be made. I think there's a lot of television exposure to be had, and I think there's a lot of money to be made for him. So I think, you know, I think that's just the natural progression. I think that's what Bob Arum is telling him. I think that's what his team, his manager Yves Klimas is telling him. And I think I certainly know that he's not scared of any of those dudes at 130. So I think as far as the entertainment factor with Lomachenko, I think that's yet to come.
Yeah, because if he doesn't have a rematch set up against Teofimo, you know, is there really any reason to stay at 135? None.
I think the other guys at 135 outside of Teofimo Lopez, I think just by virtue of Lomachenko's skill set, he would be a holy terror for Haney, for Ryan Garcia, or for Tank. I think he's a complete holy terror against those guys. I think I can see him beating Ryan Garcia. I can see him beating Haney. Because I think, you know what I'm saying, because with Haney, when they always mentioned Lomachenko's name to Haney, there was a lot of hesitation. They were, you know what I'm saying, whenever they used to mention Lomachenko to Haney, his mannerisms, his face, his voice got different. So I think it's already in his head that Lomachenko poses problems for him that he might not necessarily have answers for at this point, as skilled as he is. Lomachenko versus Tank, I think that's and a lot of people are gonna laugh and say this. I think Tank could beat Lomachenko up bad. I think Lomachenko can embarrass Tank if he kept it boxing, but it's really hard to see anybody being able to neutralize Tank with boxing, just because he's such a weight bully. And I think if that fight ever happened, and if this universe flipped upside down, I could actually see Tank knocking Lomachenko out.
Very possible. Not out of the realm of possibility. So that's going to conclude episode 64 of the Standing Aid podcast. I'd like to again thank Gary Kittleson for joining us as usual from 3D Boxing Blog. Also, my usual suspects, Cortney Tanner out in Georgia, Tommy Rush Jr. out in Texas, and Michael Gomes out in New Jersey. Also, I want to reiterate again, this episode 64 is dedicated to the memory of Cynthia Saldana, who is the lead photographer for Supreme Boxing and the life partner of Anthony Saldana. So our thoughts and well wishes go out to the Saldana family, all the Supreme Boxing crew, all the loved and close ones, family as well, friends. So that's going to be it, guys. Episode 64 is in the books. Till next time, have a good night.